All right. Well, we should kind of go over those conference championship games. Feels a bit anticlimactic, but um, yeah, let's just breeze through them a little bit. Friday night, Liberty beat New Mexico State 49-35. Washington beat Oregon 34-31. Didn't feel that close. Like you mentioned, they were up 17 points. What were your takeaways from the Pac-12 title game?
Dude, that game feels like forever ago.
I know
Like,
it
doesn't
does.
it? Holy cow. It was just on Friday night. It's not that long ago, but it felt like, just a lifetime ago. So I was impressed with Washington's physicality. Their ability not just to throw the ball, but to run the ball as well and
Yes.
maintain balance, I thought was incredible because Oregon has legit dudes. Like, we weren't wrong to be impressed by Oregon. I think we undervalued what Washington has in the trenches. That's kind of where I came, away from it. Washington, you talk about a team that is undefeated, and they had this was their big game, right, against Oregon. But due to all the chaos that happened on Saturday and Sunday, and even like spilling over into Monday and today, no one even talks about that Washington team. Like, they are so overlooked for being, a championship contender. They're just sliding under the radar, and I think that's kind of interesting too. Kind of an interesting point. Texas is a favorite against them, and maybe rightly so. But yeah, I was impressed with Washington. Their physicality it jumped off to me.
For sure. Dylan Johnson, 152 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Great game by him. He was running hard. And honestly, just the fact that like Jalen McMillan was healthy again. I think
Mm-hmm.
for the first time in a while, they had all three of Adunze, McMillan, and Polk
Yeah,
healthy. And man, when you put three NFL receivers on the field at the
yeah.
same time with an NFL quarterback throwing them the ball, that's a little different in college. Like, you don't see that all the time. And early in the year, you heard some comparisons to like 2019 LSU. They're not 2019 LSU, but
Right.
that passing game, I think on any given day they can beat anybody in the country. I would not pick them to win the title. I don't expect that to happen, but Washington, hey, they're as dangerous as anybody. Kalen DeBoer has done an incredible job as their head coach. Can't say enough about the job he's done and what their offense can do when they're rolling. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to talk about on that game, but I was just really impressed by Washington.
I think with you mentioned the receivers for Washington and how like with McMillan back healthy, and with Odunze and Polk, that's a matchup problem, especially when like if Penix is spinning it well and he was throwing better again in that Oregon game than he had previously, in previous weeks. He was definitely spinning the ball better. I think there was kind of rumors out there that he might have been a little nicked up in kind of in the couple of weeks prior, and maybe that's why his stats weren't as good. But he does starting to look healthy again. He's going to have a nice break. They're going to be a matchup problem for Texas on the
Yeah,
edges. Like in the secondary, I think they have a real chance, especially if they can have just a little bit of balance with the run. They have a real matchup problem with those receivers. Yeah, that's a great
for
point.
sure. All right, getting into Saturday, Miami, Ohio wins the MAC against Toledo 23-14. Good showing by them. Chuck Martin has been there for a long time and just has gotten that program doing good things. Into the Big 12. Speaking of Texas, they demolished Oklahoma State 49-21. Didn't feel that close. Like, I was
No.
actually fairly impressed by Oklahoma State in the first half as far as just they were able to string some drives together and score points every time. It felt like Texas was just stomping on their throat. And they couldn't stop Texas. Texas's offense, especially the first half, they felt inevitable.
Yeah.
Didn't matter
Yeah.
what they were doing, passing the ball, running the ball. I was just really impressed by this Texas team. They have maybe the most complete offense in the country.
I complete. I would have said that maybe before the running back went down. Um, but yeah, I can't really argue with you. They looked fantastic. They had an early, well, no, sorry, late first half. They had an interception, but prior to that, it was just touchdown, 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 touch every single time. They were just rolling down the field. Ewers looked good. He looked really good. Texas is interesting. Like, Texas will like that Texas Washington game. It's not going to get as much hype as Michigan Alabama. I might be more interested to watch Washington Texas
Yes.
Than the other one. So yeah, these are two really good teams, and I would kind of like I would be very okay with either of those two teams winning the title. Like I have nothing
Absolutely.
against either one. I'd be excited for either team to win a championship.
I think America will be rooting for the winner of that game in the title game.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah.
That's going to be so much fun. I hope it lives up to what we see the potential there, because that could be an absolutely thrilling game. Mountain West, Boise State beats UNLV 44-20. Expect that guy. I don't know if they announced it yet, but the interim coach, I think he's going to get the full-time job. Good job by him, turning around a season after they fire their coach halfway through the year. All right, Ashley, we got to talk about the SEC title game. Alabama beats Georgia 27-24. A lot we could go here. I mean, a lot of places we could go. You want me to start, or you want to go?
Why don't you go first? Yeah, why don't you go first?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the game was. It's almost like horrible for me to say this. It almost failed to live up to my expectations for the game. And right. I say that despite it being a 3-point game. I kept waiting for Georgia to make that one stop to get the ball back in the fourth quarter with a chance to go ahead, and they just couldn't do it. I was a little bit underwhelmed by Georgia's defense, especially in the fourth quarter, when it felt like they had every opportunity. When their offense finally got going, it felt like they had multiple chances to get a 3-and-out and get the ball back to Carson Beck and the offense with a chance to win the game. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you haven't quit thinking about this since then, but the catch at the end of the first half, the so-called catch, I guess you could say, by Isaiah Bond on fourth down.
Yeah.
I just don't know how they don't review that. Like, that was pretty clearly, to me, not a catch, and that very well could have changed the outcome of the game. You never know what happens. I mean, what do they say? The hummingbird effect. Like, you never know what could transpire after that. We don't know, but you obviously you would like Georgia's chances to have won that game considerably more if that catch is overturned. Give credit, I guess, to Alabama. They played pretty well. I thought their defense played pretty well, especially the first half. Like, they really shut down Georgia's offense. It just felt like a fairly evenly matched game. And one of the teams, so cliche, but one of the teams had to win, and Alabama won.
I think there's going to be maybe there is a perception out there that the way to beat Georgia is to have a bunch of good receivers and a really good quarterback. Mm-hmm. And if you have a bunch of NFL receivers and an NFL quarterback and a good offensive line, you can take this defense apart. And to that, I say, well, yeah, I mean, they're a bunch of NFL players, like, of course, no kidding. Alabama beat Georgia in a way that only Alabama can do. I don't think there's anyone else. Alabama challenged Georgia to a physical football game. Kirby absolutely accepted the invitation. He was all into that. And like, we aren't throwing deep. We will run the ball. Like, there is a fundamental belief with both Nick and Kirby that at our core, we will gain 4 yards a carry on the ground. We will do that. And the team that will do that better will win. Mm-hmm. And it was an old school game. Georgia had better weapons. I honestly think Georgia has a better quarterback. I know Milroe gets a ton of credit, but Carson Beck over the course of the year has been far more consistent, and it has not made nearly as many bad decisions. He didn't play fantastic in this game, and that's for another time. But Alabama was able to stop Georgia from gaining that 4-yard run on first down.
Yeah,
they were able to force Georgia into 2nd and 8 a lot. And from then on, then they got Georgia behind the chains. And so I think you have to give a tremendous amount of credit to the Alabama defensive line, mm-hmm. their edge rushers in particular, and those safeties. The safeties came flying down in run support regularly. Caleb Downs was all over the place. The cornerbacks for Alabama straight up mugged receivers all night long.
Yeah.
And they got called a couple of times. Most of the times they did not get called. That's kind of what you're in for when you play Alabama. Like, you're not going to get all those calls when you play them. They're going to just mug you every time, and sometimes we'll throw a flag, but for the most part, we're not going to. That is what it is. I was impressed with Alabama's ability to go back to being that physical Bama team, because I honestly thought that they had lost that. I thought that was gone. We had the days of Tua, of Mac Jones. Steve Sarkisian was the play caller there, right? Like, that was a more finesse team. This here is not that team. This Alabama is not going to be able just to throw the ball all over you. They're not.
Right.
They're going to try to run the ball right at you and play really, really good defense. And I didn't know if they were going to be able just to get that back. And they did. They out Georgia. And I have full respect for them. Like, that was a win. Alabama deserved to win that football game, because, again, Georgia and Alabama both at their core. Well, Nick and Kirby, like, particularly, like, those coaches, they come from, like, that mindset's the same, is that we're going to run, and the throw that's an extra thing, but we start with the run. And sure. And Alabama did a great job of stopping it. So they pushed Georgia around. I hadn't seen that in so long, man. It's been so long since Georgia got pushed around in any game of any kind. It's been just forever. It's a 29 game win streak. Like, Georgia hasn't lost in so long. It's a rough one to lose too, because, like, you could have lost, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I guess, at Tennessee and been fine, if you come back and beat Bama and you're going to the playoff. But the winning streak snaps here, and you're left out of everything, and you don't get no trophies, nothing. And that sucks. Georgia went back to back. I think it's a run that is, I don't know if it'll be duplicated. I really don't. Not with the extended playoff. I think it's going to be harder to repeat as champs. And yeah, Georgia was the only team that actually did it in the CFP era too. So it's not easy there either. So I think it's closing the book on that, closing the book on a great run. This has been by far the best 2-year stretch that this Georgia fan has ever seen, maybe ever will see. And you have to just accept it. And because you knew it was going to end at some point, and it sucks that it had to end to Alabama. It really does. That's not fun.
Yeah. Okay. SMU beats Tulane 26-14 in the AAC championship game. Troy beat App in the Sun Belt championship game 49-23. Florida State beat Louisville 16-6. We kind of touched on that game already, but do you have any other thoughts on the Florida State Louisville result?
The Florida State defensive line is legitimate. Like, there's multiple guys on that defensive line that would start.
Braden Fisk was nuts that game.
Not just him. There's Jared Verse. Is it Pat Payton? He was all over the place. They have a bunch of guys that were, it was like a race to get to the quarterback. Those guys were destroying up front, tackles for loss and sacks. I was really impressed with their defensive line. That would have been fun to see against, maybe like a Washington team, see Penix back there, and like who can win. If Florida State gets to Penix a lot, like say they play Washington, right? Like say they get to Penix, suddenly that becomes a game that Florida State can easily contend in, So I was impressed with them. They did not have much offense as far as throwing. They were good running the ball, but they really didn't have much just as far as throwing anything downfield.
Yep. Michigan beat Iowa in the Big Ten title game 26-0. About what everyone expected. Michigan didn't need to show anything on offense. Iowa couldn't do anything. Michigan had 2 offensive touchdown drives of 5 yards and 6 yards. So is there anything else you got on this game?
The game was over when Michigan went ahead by 3 points, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that game was over. Yeah.
Yeah.